Hey, happy 10-year anniversary. Congratulations to you guys, and we wish you nothing but the best.
We love you guys, man. You're the best. Many more blessings.
I feel like this could be one of our most important podcasts ever. I think this will be our most important podcast ever.
Why?
Well, for a few different reasons, but I think the main reason of the podcast, God, I feel like every time with every podcast, it takes a couple times to get started, like an old car, right? Because I there's some starts, and then I feel like I want to start from the beginning again.
Okay.
Because it takes a couple times. Okay, jumpstart on this podcast. Like, I feel like it's important because I really want to hear like the next direction of Soloka. Like, I feel like we've evolved so much over this last year, 2023. We've done so many things that we kind of set out to do, that we wanted to do. So it's like it's been almost a year since we've kind of laid any goals out, or I don't even want to use the word goals, like, because it sounds too, I just want to like have this podcast be kind of like a free flowing conversation of what me and you would have if we were sitting on the back porch and we're like, okay, like we need to have a meeting, like, in that we need to like figure out what we want to do in the future with Soloka. Where do we want to go in the new year? It's kind of approaching the new year. We have a lot of exciting things coming up that I know we're right in the middle of. But as we head into 2024, what are some things that are on our mind that we want to speak out loud to each other and hold each other accountable over the next year of like, hey, we want to get this, and this done, and these are the reasons why we want to get this done, and this is how we plan to get it done. Because I feel like we have a really good track record of saying these things to each other, discussing these things. Even pre-podcast, we used to have these discussions, and now we just brought it onto the podcast of just basically outlining what we want to do and then trying to do it. So
No, and then we do it.
Yeah. So, but I want these, like, the original idea of the seed of this podcast was like, oh, wow, we could speak these things to each other and hold each other accountable, and wow, we put it on YouTube, so shit, we've got to fucking make this happen,
Yeah.
So I feel like we haven't had one of those in a while where we're like, okay, 2024, this is the direction that Soloka is going to be heading.
Yeah.
In a few different directions, because I feel like we're heading in an awesome direction right now, but there are some things that need to be switched up, adjusted, talked about. And I feel like this is a good place to have that discussion, because there might be some back and forth. And I hope we can warn everybody, I don't know if you need a warning or not, but when we let you into these discussions, these are discussions between two grown-ups, that don't always agree on everything, and they challenge each other, and just basically trying to see like, hey, is what you want sound? Have you thought it through? Like, so we're each other's checks and balances. So I don't want people to mistake that as like bickering or anything like that. It's like when you put your business hat on and we have this business together, like, we have to become these other characters that are not in, like, also in a relationship, in a marriage. Like, we have to, like, because it's a separate thing.
Yeah.
So I just don't want people to be triggered when they see that, because we do put on different hats. Like, once we leave Soloka, it's like, oh my God, like, how can I buy you flowers? Or how
You
can
never do.
But I'm a little bit more romantic. Okay, let's just
I don't like flowers anyway.
see, exactly. But there are different hats you wear, especially if you're going to be in business with your significant other and you want to maintain a romantic relationship where you keep all that fire and passion lit, because it could get crazy.
It does get crazy.
It does get crazy.
It does get crazy. I think so setting goals and like, and I know that we didn't really want to use that word or anything like that, but I like using that word because it's like, there's these things that like you want to get done, right? And so for me, one of the goals that I really, really wanted to do, and I think that that's where we kind of like figured out that we were totally different and we have different ideas of like what we want to do with even that goal. And that goal was just taking like a weekend like getaway, and we talked about what that would look like for me, like just me like basically telling you like, oh, I would love to take like a weekend getaway, like somewhere completely isolated, you know, like in a cabin somewhere, you know, where you could do like nature walks and all that kind of stuff, where I'm not enslaved to the concept of time. Like I don't want to be enslaved to that, because it's like even today it's like, okay, at this time you have this, but between these times and this time you have to do this and that. And so for me, like that's what was the idea of like a relaxing vacation, is like getting away, being in an isolated place and not having like this commitment to time. And I know we had that conversation and you were like, whoa, that sounds like just too stressful for me, you know? And your idea of a relaxing vacation was the complete opposite of what my relaxed vacation weekend getaway would be.
Yeah, I would love to take the subways in New York for a weekend. Like we just spent a week in New York. We take the subways around town and everything like that. And it is more of like, okay, we have to be here at this time and do this, this, and this. But I feel like that's just a huge adrenaline rush, and that's how I get my peace.
Yeah. So that's where we were just kind of like, you know, because I remember you were like, oh my God, that sounds like so like anxiety driven vacation, to just basically, you know, be somewhere where there's nothing to do and like you're just kind of like forced to do nothing, you know. And so for you, I know that was like one of those things where you're just kind of like, whoa, that's super anxiety driven. And for me, it was like one of those things where I was like, I would love to do that. And you were just kind of like, whoa, our ideas of even, you know, a relaxing time is completely different. And so that's where it basically, you know, it's one of those things where we know that like obviously we're completely different people and we relax in different kind of ways, but it's like it makes a lot of sense because you are a little bit more, you know, like you're not in the studio like having all these people come in and like, you know, socializing with all these people, and like you're a little bit more of the introvert where you're just kind of like behind like the scenes, all that kind of stuff. And so for me, like, you know, there are times where I'm like, I just don't want to have conversations with, you know, people, because it's like I've had conversations like the whole entire weekend or the whole entire week, and you just kind of want to feel like you could, there's some kind of silence there.
But there's a misunderstanding, because my trip to New York on the subways is not so I can have these in-depth conversations with random strangers.
Yeah.
It's not. It's just the stimulus that's around us. You know what I mean? It would still just be me and you going to different places, but I'm saying is that there's just more kinetic energy around. You know, you feel like, oh my God, there's this whole world around us. Whereas sometimes in nature, it could feel, at least to me, very isolating. Like, oh my God, like I've chosen to isolate myself and kind of escape from what I believe is like the beauty of life, which is like just all this fucking chaotic, absurd shit happening at the same time all around you, while you're allowed to just kind of walk through it and you're on your own little journey, but it's happening all around you at all times. To me, that's more comforting. Like, we're all in this together, you know, like we're all, you know. And but if we're in a camp Crystal Lake somewhere, fuck it, you know, then it's like, you know, I'm worried about, oh my God, is there gonna be a bear? Is there gonna be a rattlesnake? Do I even, you know, there becomes that nature shit where I am learning to be more at peace with it and of course appreciate it, but it's new to me.
Yeah.
You know, so I go where what makes me comfortable. It's that kind of the city feeling of just having that chaos where you're in the middle of a tornado, but it's kind of very calming because you have, as long as you stay on a path of you having some kind of purpose and some kind of mission you're on, all that chaos, it's just, it could kind of just quiet down around you. And but you know what? I'm not against going to fucking a nature getaway, a meditative nature getaway. Like, I'm always down to kind of switch up my surroundings and try something new. And I know it's probably revealing about my personality that I can't stand any time alone by myself in nature. You know, it's like you're more willing to do that, so you're more at peace with your inner self, probably.
Well, I mean, I think it has a lot to do with like the like how much how accessible I am, right? Where it's like, I on weekends, like, there's a lot of people that come into the studio, and I love that. I love like people, and I love having like conversations, and my love language is quality time. So it's like anytime that I could spend time with people, it's like I'm like, wow, this is when I feel like the most loved, but I also understand that it's like I do crave moments of solitude where it's like I just want to be by myself and like my thoughts, and I want to be able to like listen to them and like listen to like why I'm having like these thoughts, and so for me, like an isolating experience like that, where you're just kind of like, where you're forced to basically be in like your own mind, is important, because it's like there's reasons why you're constantly having those thoughts, and your thoughts, they only change 20%. And so it's like if you're constantly having like these thoughts and this and that, and it's like, and you're not like addressing them, it's like, we should be addressing those kind of things, and like we should be figuring out why we're having thoughts like this and all that kind of stuff. And so for me, I like that idea of basically just not having, not like, it's almost like you're forcing yourself to like get away, and like there's nothing to do, so it's like you're forced to do nothing. And as much as we're like, oh, we're gonna go up to like LA and visit family, like even then it's like, all right, well, we have to go to this place, and now we have to go to that place, and now we have and so it never feels like you're actually like having time off, or time to where it's like you want that. It's like, it's always like, all right, well, now we're going here, and now we're going, and to me that's not, it's like, it's enjoyable, but it's like, it's not like a vacation, and it's not time off. So it's like time off for me is like really just basically being like, I don't want to be like, I don't want to feel like I'm so committed to like time, and I'm constantly committed to time. Like I have to be like, okay, what time is it right now? Set alarms for all the meetings that we have, Google fucking alerts, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, and so it's like, you could understand that it's like you just want to be somewhere where it's like there's nothing on the calendar, there's nothing there, and it's like, I don't even want to have a conversation with anyone, because it's like, it's really disconnecting yourself from like so much of that constant, like, like it's draining. So it's like, how do I, as like someone that's like, that has become so accessible to people, where it's like I teach, I am emotionally accessible to people where it's like they do come in and they tell me a lot of like the stuff that's going on in their life. It's like, how do I as a person like recharge myself so I could still be showing up for people when they're telling me their life story.
And it makes so much sense, because I spend a lot of time, or most of the time, behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I don't interact with people much. I'm not as accessible to people coming into the store, but I am on social media a lot. I basically on the website a lot, online a lot, always posting, always trying to do that. And that is a very isolating, kind of lonely experience, because even if you're on social media, even if you're interacting with people on social media, replying, commenting, doing whatever to keep those things going, you're by yourself staring at your phone.
Yeah.
You just can't, you're in the zone, you're thinking this, but anybody looking at you from the outside, it's like, oh my God, that dude's over there by himself staring at a little box. But for me, I'm looking in that box, and to me, that's the world that I have to deal in, to keep things going. Like we get so many sales from online. Mm-hmm. We get so many different orders all the time from different states, so I know the value in that. But it is a very cut off experience. Yeah. Very, very cut off. So sometimes when I'm doing that all week and I'm thinking about like, oh, what do I want to do? I want to go out there and be in a crowd.
Yeah.
Not to be like one-on-one, like not to be like, oh my God, because I need to talk to all these people. Like I just want to be around people.
Yeah.
In the mix. I don't have to be socializing, but to me, I just, crave just being around larger crowds where and that just makes me super happy. I don't know why.
Well, it's so interesting, because it's like, I know that we've been working on a project, and this project is, we also had talked about like when we met and like how I thought that you were the male version of me, you know. And then I realized I was like, he's not the male version of me, you know,
No.
because it's like we're completely opposites.
Fuck yeah.
And so the crazy thing about like us is that we're completely opposites and utilizing our strengths, right? To where it's like I enjoy people and you know, I enjoy conversations and I want to know, like, I'm very curious. I want to know where people are visiting from. And, you know, I genuinely want them to safely travel and, you know, all these kind of things. And so for me, like, I love that, you know, but it's like, it's also like one of those things where it's like with you, you know, it's like you're, you know, you are behind the scenes and you're more like, you know, doing the social media and all that kind of stuff. And so it's like at the end of the day, we're like, all right, well, now we put on a different hat, you know, to then be in this relationship where it's like, you know, the hat changes to like now we're parents and we're also the significant other hat never goes off. But I'm saying like, you know, then we have like these other roles, you know. But it's like it's really cool that like I feel like we've tried to work together before and it didn't work, you know. And I think that we were in a point in, at least me, like I was in a point in my life where I was like very insecure and I had to deal with a lot of like issues that, you know, that these were issues that I didn't know that I should have taken care of before I got into like a more serious relationship. And so I was very insecure at the time, so it's like we couldn't work together at all. And so it's like now it's like we've had so much experience with going through something like that where it's like we try to work together and it didn't work out and all that kind of stuff, and now we're working together and it's like, and we're not like perfect at working together, you know. It's still really, really difficult, especially when, you know, the person that you like have to sleep next to is like criticizing stuff that you do, you know. And so it's hard.
A lot of it's just editing now. It's not it's more like just realizing stuff you shouldn't do and shouldn't say.
Yeah.
Like I haven't figured out what to do. I just figured out what not to do. And you learn that over time. It's like, yeah, you could be overly critical about something and it's like, but you have to double check yourself and be like, is that your right to do that? Is that your position to do that? Or is that going to be helpful in any way? And a lot of the times, or half the times, I'm wrong too. So I've had to learn that over time, you know. And I just know that when it comes to anything design wise with Soloka, I just don't question it.
Yeah.
You know, and I maybe did in the past, you know, because everybody thinks in their own head that I could do a little better. I'm a little better. Yeah. I'm a designer too, right? Just I haven't let the world know, you know. But no, you know, it's like you start realizing it's just not constructive in any way. But I mean, thankfully, there's still always input and everything like that, you know. But when it comes to being overly critical about something or just the words you choose, just I've learned to edit and censor. And just kind of, you know, not that I've become enlightened in any way where I'm just a better person, because I'm honestly, I don't think I'm any better or worse. You know, I'm kind of just learning just what not to do. Because I don't want to like try to pretend like I'm just so enlightened after these years and I've learned so much. It's just,
but that is the reality of what does happen. I mean, maybe enlightened is like too much of a like
bullshit.
Like you're like, oh, I'm so enlightened now. So like everyone just,
yes, I had to go through this and now I know everything and I'm going to bestow it upon you. Bullshit.
But I think that like there is something about like, obviously, like, hey, life gives us experiences and what we choose and how we choose to like react to those experiences really like form character, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's really like that. So it's like we've been through a lot of things like in our whole entire relationship, you know. We like we basically co-parent, all that kind of stuff, and you know, we're doing a lot of things together, you know. And so all those kind of things, they are learning experiences for us to basically be able to implement those into like the things that are going to happen next, you know? So it's like you do have to feel like you're at least taking away from shitty experiences, because those are the ones that like obviously like give us like the most growth, and you know, like really challenge us to like really put us in situations where you're like, how are you going to react to this, and is that going to be the old you, or is this going to be the new you?
Well, I want less shitty experiences.
Well, yeah, like,
you know, every year. So if I had 12 shitty experiences last year, I want maybe 9 this year.
Okay,
you know,
well,
I want to chip away at
I
it.
don't want to like have any shitty experiences.
Well, I don't know if you could go without shitty experiences.
Well, yeah, but I think that, so I with you, I'm very like, just make sure you're careful with what you say, because there's been a lot of times where it's like, you know, I remember like we had like an incident where we were like driving, right? And like when we used to do like the delivery service and all that kind of stuff. And so I just want to give context to like, you know, like Manny's a master manifester. Like anything that he says, it comes to life. And so I remember we were driving around, and like I think the car overheated or something like that, and I was like, fuck. And so we don't know anything about cars, so we like pull over, and it's like, you know, the heat levels are like high or whatever. And so I was like, oh my god, there's probably no water in this thing. And so I at least know that, you know. And so you have to wait until it cools off, and then you add water and all that kind of stuff. And so things like that kept happening. I think something else happened to the car that exact same day, and you said, what else could happen today? And I was like, and something else horrible happened.
Oh, God.
And I was like, oh shit. And then like I think you said it one more time, and I was like, just don't say that anymore, you know, because it's like it's like I feel like there is people, and you could take it as like I'm just a fucking crazy fucking person, but I do believe that there is people that they have that, like, that they're very connected with like where the source of things come from, right? And I think you're one of those kind of people where it's like you're connected, even though you're not like a religious person or spiritual or whatever. It's like I do feel that there is people that are very connected, and as soon as they say things, they basically align to like happen, you know? And I do believe that everyone is capable of manifesting things. Just like I feel like that like saying like closed mouths don't get fed, you know? I love that like saying, because it's like when you start to say the things that you want, and like you start basically like feeling comfortable enough around like people that, you know, you start telling people like what you want to do, and like, you know, all that kind of stuff, automatically everything starts to shift in the direction of like, oh damn, like this, you want this, cool, everything shifts into place. But it's also like one of those things where it's like, hey, you know what, when you're having these kind of conversations with like your friends, or, you know, like you're networking, you know, everything's network, right? So it's like even if you're having a conversation with like friends and stuff, and you're like, oh, I have this vision and this idea for this thing, it's like everyone's listening, and everyone is there to listen and to basically be able to be like, oh, well, I have something that could help. So it's like that's where the alignment of like, you know, you getting to the place that you need to get.
I want So Loca
Yeah.
to be a global, worldwide brand
Yeah.
that creates generational wealth for a family.
I want the same thing.
Well, there you go. If you're
All right.
correct,
Yes.
then
And
you've
so
heard it here
that's-
first.
So I feel like that is like I feel that, you know, there's a lot of people that put in a lot of like, you know, like time and energy into like, well, I hate my job, or you know, all these like phrases that people have in like their mind, right? Like of like waking up and like, well, I don't have this, or oh, I don't, you know, these kind of things, right? That happen, that like everyone becomes like just kind of like almost like, you know, like they get stuck in like these ruts, right? And so if you could change what you're saying, it changes it changes the perspective of everything. So you start to look at things in a whole totally different way, you know, as opposed to thinking like, I hate my job, you know, and you're just kind of like every Sunday night, you're like, oh, I have to go and I hate this job and this and that, as opposed to thinking like, hey, you know what? This job, it basically like, you might not like it or whatever, but it is like providing like a roof over your head. It's you know, as much as you don't like it, like it allows for you to take a vacation, it allows for you to like live in a comfortable space, all those kind of things. So it's like, if you could really shift your mind to basically look at things in a way where it's like you're not thinking about it in like a negative kind of way, it's like you're just you vibe at like a really high frequency, and once you vibe at a high frequency, everything it starts to align. Everything that you want starts to align with everything that you need and everything that you've start to put out in the universe.
But that's a dramatic shift for some people, because for some people, right, I mean, it's just maybe the family around them, the friends around them, like they just don't even know it, but everybody's talking like that. So it kind of, it's been kind of passed down to them in a way that it's such a dramatic shift to even shift that.
Well, yes, it is a very dramatic shift, right? And I always like, this sounds really fucked up, but you should cut people out of your life that don't like see things, not like see like things the way that you do, but it's like, don't give them access to I don't sit down with certain people and have these kind of conversations, because I know that they're never going to be at that level.
Yeah, but that works with the friends around you. But most of the toxic traits that people carry with them comes from the family around them.
Exactly.
You can't cut off a family member.
Well, I have. And
yeah, but
but what I'm saying is like, yes, a lot of times people, all the toxic traits that we inherit are mostly from our family. And those are all like basically traumatic experiences that like they've had that they never healed. And like now we're basically dealing with with how we absorb the family dynamic. Because it's like, in all reality, it's like, if you're dating someone and you want to know why they have all these like, you know, traits and all this kind of stuff, sit with them and watch them be around their family, and then you'll soon realize, you're like, now I know why he reacts the way that he reacts, because X, Y, and Z, like mom, dad, whatever, you know. So it's like being able to be around like a family dynamic and understanding why that person is the way that they are is really important. But I also feel that it's like, as you start to like form your own family and things like that, like you're able to basically decide like, hey, you know what, like, are you gonna like be super accessible to someone that has that continues to be like super harmful and like that can't support the vision that you do. So it's like, for me, like, you know, it's like I've always had like this issue, right, where it's like I've always needed validation from my mom, you know, like always have needed this like kind of like validation from my mom, and like would always call her and basically be like, guess what, you know, this is happening, because like I know that like the subconscious in me was like really like something where it's like I really wanted for my mom to finally realize that I changed my life and that I wasn't that fuck up that like gave her so much heartache. So for me, like the validation from my mom was really important, because it's like I know that it was like almost like a redemption of like her saying like, wow, she did it, and like now I'm proud, you know. But it's like at the same time, it's like when that parent isn't like reciprocating the, wow, that's so good, oh my god, I'm so proud, and this and that, like when that person isn't giving you like what you need to basically be able to move on and heal that, like it's like, you know, I'm not going to just basically continue to try to water that when it's like I'm not getting the same kind of like, you know. Yeah,
no. I totally, that probably should be what must have to happen in some situations, but I'm just saying easier said than done. Yeah. Easier said than done. There's some people out there, you can't fault them of like, oh shit, they're obviously these toxic traits or some bad traits are kind of being put off onto them, and they're repeating it without even knowing it, and it's like the source of it is like someone they love so much, you know. So it's like you gotta really like, these are complicated issues,
no,
you know,
for
that
sure.
it's just, yeah, but it is. But yeah, when you boil it down to it, it's like I could either hate my job or I could find the reasons I love it. I could either hate this or I could find the reasons I love it. It's all like not a mind trick, but just a mind shift. And it goes in and out all the time. It's not like, oh, suddenly your mind shifted and you're just going to have the perfect answer all the time, or in every situation you're going to act a certain way. No, it's just another kind of tool to kind of help you sometimes, of being like, all right, like I'm gonna fucking force myself to be optimistic because I know anything could happen in this world.
Yeah,
it's so fucking chaotic. There's so many twists and turns. It's so complex. Every single human being is so complex, so that gives me hope. It doesn't seem like things are so predictable, where I could even tell myself, oh, it's all, everything's gonna suck. It's like eventually you have to be like, well, what do you know? You don't know nothing, dude. You're just fucking negative talking yourself to death so you don't have to do anything.
Exactly.
You give yourself an excuse to not do anything because you've already talked yourself out of it. And, until you tell that fucking little voice to shut up. Yeah. But like I said, sometimes those voices have been there forever. So how do you
quiet them?
How do you quiet them?
And I think that like it is one of those things, right, where it's like I've heard a lot of people where it's like, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm starting a business, or oh, I'm starting like this new venture, or I'm doing this thing or whatever. And I'm like, wow, that's so great. But then there's also like those friends that are like, wow, you're going to put a lot of time and energy into something. And like, what if you fail? And so we're automatically programmed to think about like, well, what if like we suck at it? And what if like we fail and all that kind of stuff? But it's like, damn, like that's really fucking sad that automatically like what we think about is like the shitty outcome of it, and we never think about like, but what if we're successful, or what if like you like are great at it. We never think about those kind of things. And it's like, and if we thought about those kind of things like that, right, like we would be unstoppable. And it's not that it's like you should think like, wow, I'm gonna be so great at this. Like, no, like because you're probably not.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you are going to fail. Like, your mind is right. It is preparing you for like, hey, yes, you will fail. You will fail. I think about at least 20 different experiences. We can go in depth to all of them along this journey where we have failed, like miserably. Yeah. But it's like, what's that next step? That little Rocky mentality of like, all right, yeah, I fucking lost. But guess what? I'm not down, motherfucker. I'm coming back. I'm coming back.
I'm still up.
I'm still here.
No,
exactly.
But I think the thing about that is that it's like the definition of like failure, success, all that kind of stuff. They're so vague, right? Like they're vague things where it's like, well, what would you identify as like you failed? And in all reality, to me, is like you just gave up and you're like, I'm not doing anything at all anymore. That's like failing for sure. Is like you're just not doing anything and you're just kind of like, well, like I just don't want to do anything anymore.
Or that the business, you're like, oh my God, I started this business and like I'm 6 months in and like I'm having days where I haven't sold anything, and it's like, this business wasn't meant to be. Yeah. It wasn't meant to be. It wasn't. And you could be like, oh, I just got to close it. And instead of being like, well, what do I have to do to fucking keep this shit alive? Do I have to fucking work nights to fucking deliver this? Or do I have to fucking, remember when I was delivering Thai food and shit like that? Shit got so tough. We were both working so many side jobs, but guess what?
I had 2 other jobs.
We were not going to let the fire that was So Loca, that fire, we were never going to let that go out. Because keeping that fire alive, that dream, that passion is more important to us than anything.
And that's where, right, like it's like there's like that fire, which is passion and all that kind of stuff, and that's where I'm like very, very like I'm very, very limited to who I share that with, who I have like these conversations with, because it's like there is people that they'll, you tell them like you're fucking this gigantic plan and this idea of like what you would want to see for yourself, and people just kind of like, they give you this look of like, what the fuck? And it's like, I don't need that. No, I don't need that. Doubt. Like I don't it's like, it's bad enough I have my own doubt. I doubt myself all the time, but guess what? I know that there's not going to be someone that's going to show up for me like I show up for me. So it's like, for me, it's like, it's like you have to see it as like something where it's like watering the plants, right? Like the plants, every plant that is like in the studio and is in the house, you have to water it, right? And you have to water it, and you have to make sure that you're watering it and that you're giving it the essentials, which is like water and like sunlight and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, how are we like taking care of ourselves? How are we watering ourselves? And it's like, and so it's like you have to have the mentality of like fruit in the fridge, right? If there's one that's rotten, it's gonna rot all of them. So it's like, I don't like to basically be around people that don't freaking believe in themselves. And that's because when people don't believe in themselves, or they don't have like this thing of like that they could actually do something, it's like they're not going to believe in you. And so for me, it's like that's automatic, like something where it's like, all right, well, like cool, like we just can't have conversations about like planning and doing that kind of stuff, because that person doesn't believe in that kind of stuff. And so for me, it's really about like making sure that like the vision and all that kind of stuff is shared with people that also are on that same kind of thing, where they also see a vision for themselves. And when people also have these visions for themselves, they're more likely at that point where they're like, wow, how could all of us grow together?
Yes, they will uplift you. They see the power of collaboration, whereas some people, you show them that little fire, you become vulnerable, you let them in on that dream, and they try to blow it out like a birthday cake.
Yeah.
So it's like, you have to be very, very careful who you share that with. And it's almost like hardly anybody you share that with is going to really look at you, and they're going to look at you crazy.
Yeah.
So it's best to kind of keep that inside, but we know what drives us.
Yeah, exactly.
And we know where that passion comes from, and that's the source of it all.
Yeah.
So it's like, that has to be protected at all costs, and that's the main thing that I think drives everything of why we want to keep Soul Loca growing, everything like that, because we've seen how that fire has helped us so much in our life to find purpose and to really bring so many beautiful opportunities into our life, so it's like ever letting that go is an impossibility. It's an impossibility.
Exactly. And for me, like, when like the idea of like goal setting, right? Like for me, like I've always been like super goal oriented. Like I was always like, I want to have like a goal for like the week, but then I also want to have like a goal for like the month, and then I also want to have a goal for like the year. Like I've always been like that, and like I feel like it really does give me purpose, to basically set like these kind of like timeline kind of things to where it's like I could work towards them. And it doesn't have to like actually happen within a month, but it's like you're striving little by little to get that stuff done, And so that's where I'm a little bit more patient with myself with that kind of stuff, where it's like it doesn't have to be that like that timeline, It could be, it sometimes it'll be like 2 days later or 3 days later or whatever, but it is still like something where it's like you're getting it done.
Well, we should know what direction we're going in.
It's more like, yeah, it's like a like where you actually want to go. And when I think about like goals and all that kind of stuff, I think about like obviously like security, like I think about security, I think about wealth, I think about health, I think about sustainability. These are like things that when I think about like that I and this is like in the near future, right? Like within the year, like these are words that come into like my head where it's like, sustainability, like, and sustainability, what does that look like? And for me, sustainability is like making sure that the business is just sustaining itself, where it's just kind of like cool, like it's like a well-oiled machine. And so it's like these kind of things where it's like when we understand where we need to go and how we need to do them and all that kind of stuff, everything starts to basically like shift to where it's going to get like that, right? And so for me, like sustainability, like security, health, like mental health, physical health, and just that security of like just basically being like, we feel like very secure, we feel like we're moving in like a good direction, like
because in the beginning skills pay bills, right? That was more just a dream that before we even created the podcast, we weren't yes, we knew that our skills could pay the bills and everything like that, but we weren't quite sure that Claudia just in there doing all of her creations would pay all the bills. Like, we'd be able to sell all that, you know? So it's like, I think we've proven that, yes, skills pay bills, but it's like at now in the future, it's like we should have all of our bills, all of our payments, everything on auto pay.
Yeah.
Where it's not even, we're not even having to prove that our skills. We know that it's such on auto pay. Auto pay everything. We don't even have to worry about it. Have transcended to that next level of being like, okay, all that shit we used to worry about, it's all on auto pay. Now, how do we fucking transcend creatively? How do we transcend the business to the next level? All these different things. Once those are taken care of, which I feel like we're closer and closer to fucking that happening. We found so many streams of revenue. We found so many different ways to make money and keep this business sustainable. You know, that I feel like that next level is upon us. And it's like, that's why the importance finishing this podcast up and really speaking out some of these things, like in this new year, what directions are we headed towards? Not like just, oh, I want to have this happen. It's like, what directions?
Well, for me, like, I feel like that's basically, you know, because it's like, everything that I've ever wanted to do, like, I remember when we were living in downtown and I was like, I want to be San Diego's best. And then like a few years later, like now we're 2 years in a row of like San Diego's best. And it's like, and look, to be honest, like I'm really, really grateful for that. And like now you're like, all right, what else could we do? Because it's like, you understand that anything that you've ever wanted to do, you could do, you know, you can do it. But it's like, for me, it's not little like check marks like that. It's more like these words that I said. It's like, I want to feel secure. I want to be sustainable. I want to basically have health, and I want to have wealth. And so it's like, what does that look like? To me, like there's a vision, right? Like there's a vision in my mind of how that looks like. And yes, like everything being like paid, not having to worry about like, because there has been times in our business where we're like, oh shit, like how are we going to figure this out? How are we going to, I got the electricity cut off, when we were still in Bankers Hill, and we were a couple of years into like the business, and my electrical bill, my SDG&E bill was like $700, and I didn't have any money to pay it. So it's like, I had to basically go home and work on all the projects there that people were going to have to come and pick up, because guess what? It doesn't end. So it's like, you could be all like, I cried for like, 10, 15 minutes. And then it's like, all right, well, you still have commitments. So it's like, you still have to come through and you still have to do all that kind of stuff. So it's like, you could just cry about it, or it's like, you could actually do something about it. And so, it is an overwhelming experience, but you have to be able to have like that thick skin to basically get through it. And that's where, for me, it's like, it's these kind of like key words of like, what does that look like for me,
Well, what does in the future, let's go deep in the future here. When people see the SL, what do you want them to think of?
I want them to think of like, this is a representation of not just like me, right? Like as like a person, like I'm not, So Loca isn't just me. So Loca is all of us, it's all of us. It's the lack of representation of like me growing up without like role models that look like me, that I knew that like, for me, there wasn't, that didn't exist. Like people that look like me in like professional settings that were like in a creative like realm, there wasn't anything like that. So it's like that So Loca is that. So Loca is you being able to like be ultra pride of like who you are culturally, who you are as an individual, and like what you stand for. And like what we stand for as like a business, it's not just like, oh, we just want to look cool in clothes. Like that's not So Loca, you wanting to look cool in clothes. So Loca is someone that is like aware that, guess what, like we all have a social responsibility within ourselves to basically be able to like to look at some your friend, your partner, all that kind of stuff, like someone that you're in the same community with, and basically be like, how can I add value to this person's life, as opposed to the opposite of like, how can I take away from this person? And so for me, that's what it is. It's like being able to like have like these morals, these values of like, hey, when you see that, you're gonna automatically understand that it's like, obviously that motherfucker has really good style and that's why they're wearing it. But it's also because it's like they understand that their vision and their morals and their integrity also aligns with us. That's what whenever I see like any, like, we went to Target this past, Sunday, and I was like, and I'm like, I'm not like a really big, like, I don't like going to Target. I don't like going to Walmart. I'm not like a shopper like that. I just, these are trips that it's like, maybe I'll do like once every like 6 months, to like stock up on like toothpaste and all that kind of stuff or whatever, and we saw someone wearing a shirt, like a Soloka shirt, and I was like, oh my God, that is like, you're almost like hiding in the aisles, because it's like overwhelming in like a really good way, where you're like, oh my God, you're so giddy, and like,
well, because you remember, at least when I saw it and passed by, I was like, oh my God. First of all, I had never seen that person wearing that shirt before, so I didn't even know they had bought it or whatever. So and it was a total random person, but I recognized the shirt like from across Target. I'm like, holy shit, that is a Soloka shirt. Not only that, because I remember the photo shoot we did in National City with it. I remember taking pictures of it in the back. I remember you bleaching it. So it's like each shirt holds that little fucking kernel of a memory, and it's like you see it out there in the wild, literally locusts in the wild, and it's just an unexplainable feeling of like, it's a dopamine hit. I don't know. It's like a fucking, you're just like, oh shit. You're on cloud 9 for a second, because you're just like, damn, like, and that's a recycled, we literally thrifted the tee, and it's like, it's out there in the world, and this girl's wearing it with pride, and she's out there, like, she doesn't even know that we're like all like, we're like across the way, like, oh my God, like, but she looked like they were having an awesome time, and it's like, damn, that's an awesome representation of somebody wearing this shirt and just being themselves and fucking just really rocking it.
And like, it's so awesome, right? Because it's like, you're just like, wow, that's like insane. That you're just kind of like, whoa, that's so cool that she, is wearing it there, and you like bump into them there, and you're just kind of like, oh shit. And like, almost like something in like your heart is like, you're so giddy, and you're like, oh my God, I'm not worthy. But then you have to like correct yourself, and you're like, I am worthy of these things, because it's like, I know how much time and energy I've put into things, and how much you appreciate it when people come in, and even just the nice things that they say, and like, and they might not buy anything then, but it's like, then they follow us, and then they actually understand that it's like, we're not just a clothing brand, like, we're so much more than a clothing brand. And it's like, and that's where we basically, that's what sets us apart, right? It's like, you could really have like all kinds of clothes, and you could be like, oh, and you're like so cool in your clothes and all that kind of stuff, and it's like, that's boring. Cool, whatever, you're cool, and it's like, I'm not fucking cool. No, okay,
and that's the greatest strength that I think both of us have, is that acceptance. Yeah, because once cool goes away. Yeah, people don't know, like, you're only cool for a second, and then you become like a caricature of yourself, and it's like, come on, it's like, just own who you are, be yourself, because I'm telling you, especially when you start taking pictures of yourself or videos, people can see through.
Oh yeah,
authenticity shines. You can't fake that shit.
So for me, I'm like, I understand I'm not like so cool or whatever, and I don't fucking care, because I'm not here to basically be like this cool person or whatever, I'm here because it's like, I almost feel like I have to redeem myself, right? For like, like being like a really shitty like teen, being like, like having like these things that like have happened to me in my life. And so it's like, I feel like it's this healing journey of like, wow, like, I get to do this for work, and I don't just get to like make really cool shit, like, and sew it, and like, bleach it, and do all these kind of things. That's like the cherry on top. Like, I I'm getting to like influence and like teach the next generation of how they could do the exact same thing that I'm doing. And so for me, like, it's not, it's like sewing is like the icebreaker, right? But it's like the lifelong relationship that you're forming with like the youth, and basically being able to like show them like, hey, you know what? Like, I was not on the right path, but it's like, guess what I did to change all that kind of stuff? I hyper focused on this damn machine, on a sewing machine. And like, that's why I'm here, you know? And I remember having like this conversation with some of the youth at Arts this past Thursday. And, you know, I give them tasks and I say, hey, you know what? They have like these really cool like notepads that they got, you know, that Arts gave them. And they're beautiful, like hardcover notepads. And they're just, you know, I give them like this task of like, hey, if you can sketch designs and this and that, and you know, of something that you want to make, something that inspires you, whatever, just this is like a mood board of like you, like everything that you want or that you inspires you, whatever, it goes in this book. And so they get really excited, they're like sketching and doing all that kind of stuff. And so I was like, wow, that looks great. You know, I walk around, give them their compliments and, you know, and ask them and just, you know, really wanting to connect with them and stuff like that. And so, you know, I was like, oh, can I show you guys my sketches? And so they're like, yeah. And so I'm like showing them like the sketches that I did for the San Diego airport. And I was like, you know, I'm going to be showcasing some of my work at the airport. And they were like, wow, really? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, so like, just kind of like, what? Like, that's so cool. And I was like, yeah. And I'm like, but it's not just me. It's not just me that's showcasing, you know, like my work. It's us showcasing like our work, because it isn't just me. Right? So Loca's a representation of like so many of us that like maybe didn't have that identity to basically be able to express yourself, or maybe, you know, you didn't have that representation, or it's like it is me in so many different forms, but there's so many of us in that form. And so it's like it's not just me showing up and basically being like, this is all my work. It's like, no, this work is a symbolism of all of us in some kind of way. So it's really showing up as like, hey, I'm showing up to basically represent all of us that maybe weren't ever represented in some kind of way, you know? So it's like, I feel like that's how I want for people to like see my brand, see our brand, because it's like we put a lot of like time and energy into basically creating something that people could really like, you know, feel like they're a part of, you know, and I love that about what we've created.
It's beautiful.
That's
and
it?
I love you.
That's it.
No, well, I thought that was a great answer that like really basically put it all in perspective for me. And, you know, the new year is going to be great.
Yeah.
2024 is going to be one for the books for Soloka, and it's just felt that way for a long time. I don't know, 2024, maybe it has to do with, you know, the World Design Capital coming and all the, you know, exhibition being up, but I just feel like this new year is going to be a very transitional year for us, you know, where it's like there's this some sort of ascendance with the business, but also just, I don't know how to express it or say it, but it's a good thing, and maybe I'll become more articulate of in the future. But I just feel like there's shifts, you know, like we're going to shift in a good way.
Yeah. And we've already, this is like the last podcast, right, when I did the solo podcast of like, you know, like really everything takes time, right? And everything's like, for me, like I felt like even like last year, like there was a lot of moments where I would get very, very emotional and just overwhelmed, where it's like, how come I'm not in the point where I need to be yet? you know. And I know that I've told you a lot where I was like, I just don't feel like I'm in that like space. Like, how come I've been doing this business for 10 years and I'm still not where I need to be, you know? And I know that you've heard me say that like a bunch of times, and you're like, and so for me, it's like really like realizing like, where do I want to be then? You know, because it's like, if I'm not there, it's like, well, where do I want to be? Because it's like, I manifested where I'm at now at one point. So it's like, where do I want to be then? You know? And I feel like there was a lot of frustration with that, where it's like, you know, I want to be able to do this, and I want to be able to do that, and I want to be able to like all these kind of things, right? And that's where I feel like I would be like, you know, good or whatever. And it's like, okay, but is that like really like something that I really want and need? Or is it like just, you know, because it's like for a really long time that frustration was like one of those kind of like frustrations where it's like, someone's gonna discover me.
Like, you were waiting for someone to choose
like,
you.
To choose me.
Yes,
you
yes,
know,
yes.
to discover me. And it's like, wait, like, and I think that kind of like mentality, like, I don't know why, like, I even had that mentality to like.
You were raised in LA, maybe, like,
to like, even because it's not like if I'm an actress.
but that's
you know?
the whole thing. You think that there's always that actress or actor mentality that somebody's gonna choose you. You have to be chosen to get this great part.
Yeah.
And I felt like it did feel that way for you for a while too. It's like, when is Vogue gonna call? You know, or when is this person gonna call? And it's just like, you know, you just. That you can't, waiting for that or being mad that it didn't happen. You were right. You had to flip that little mindset a little bit because you were stuck in that.
Yeah. And I was like, well, like, you know, when is this person gonna call? And like, you know, you're just like, man, why the fuck am I never waited for anyone.
Hell no.
I've never waited for anyone to basically validate me, to give me credibility, to do any of that kind of stuff. I gave all that stuff to me. So it's like, for me to basically wait and basically be like, this person could finally make me the star that I've always wanted to be, like, is so wrong.
They'll realize it just the same time that everybody else realizes,
you know?
it.
And so
after the fact.
So for me, I'm like, you know, I always think that obviously everything is where you need to be. Everything is at the pace that you need to be, because it's like you're building yourself to be where you need to be when you're going to be there
At the right time.
at the right time, you know. But there was like there was moments where I was like, man, I just really want to like be here and do this and do, you know. But it's like, I know that there isn't a savior that is going to basically be like, I'm gonna give you everything that you need. Like, that doesn't exist.
Anoint you. Here you go, Claudia. Now you're, come on, you could do this. Here's all this.
Yeah.
Here's everything. And it's like,
I mean, if someone wants to give me like
no.
$20,000, I'll take it.
It's not realistic, and it doesn't, and it's like, and it's empty.
Yeah.
You know?
So I think that really just kind of like changing that, right? Changing that mindset of like, how can I break down like these little like keywords, right, that for like 2024, and like not even as a 2024 goal, as like a goal now of like sustainability, like wealth, health, you know, like all these kind of things that we talked about. Like, how could we break those things down to where it's like they are going to come into fruition? And so it's like, I think that that's like the challenge, where it's like, okay, like, how do I get there?
Well, this was the first step, because now we know those words, and it's like when we make decisions in the future, we have to make sure that it's pushing us towards those words.
Exactly.
Everything we do, if it's taking away for it or veering off, we just don't do it. It makes our decision making easier.
Oh yeah.
But we're headed towards something now. It's like there's a lighthouse. Whereas before it was just like a big vast ocean of we could go anywhere. Exactly. But if we have a guiding light, then it makes our life a lot easier.
And which has been like, obviously, like, I feel like goals are perfect for that, right? Where it's like they really like steer you in the direction that you are wanting to go, right? And so just how we had talked about on the podcast, like, I feel like it was in the beginning of the year where we're like, we want to do workshops and this and that. And
oh my
like,
God.
there's this week, just this week, I have 7 classes.
We workshop the fuck out of this year.
You know?
Oh my
And
God.
So, which is beautiful because it's like, look, I'm going to be completely honest with you. There's days we don't make shit in the studio. You don't sell anything. But guess what? You still put in 16 plus hours because guess what? You never clock in and you never clock out. And so if you're putting in that much time and you're also like, oh shit, and like you have to be able to understand when you can pivot and when you could do this and when you could do that, or like finding things where you're like, hey, are we going to have a sale? Hey, are we going to do this? Hey, are we going to like, how are we?
In finding the different revenue streams, because it's honestly rare now where yes, there might be days where the studio, you know, whatever, there's a goose egg in the studio where it's like, oh my God, it was just a bad day in the studio, but we still have online sales, we have sewing lessons, we have different workshops, we have all these things that usually a day goes by, there's some kind of action going on from one of these different avenues. But we had to build up those different avenues, and workshops was part of that.
Exactly.
You know?
But it was one of those things where we're not just kind of like, well, I guess we should just give up. You know, it's one of those things where we're like, hey, you know what? Like, what are the patterns that we're seeing? Because it's like, I think that like we basically started our clothing brand during COVID.
Yeah.
So COVID has been one of those things where it's like, even now, like the market of like, you know, the consistency of like how predicting a market is still really off, because it's like a lot of people are like, well, they're scared to buy. There's this or there's that. Like there's all these, you know,
And then,
things of
yeah.
like, during Christmas people buy.
Ugh.
During this day they don't buy. You know,
I think all that shit
September's slow.
It's just static.
You know, so it's like
Doesn't mean anything.
and so it's like obviously now there's no fucking prediction because it's like everything's fucking out of whack. So it's like really like deciding like, hey, where do you want to put like energy, time, and all that kind of stuff. And so for us, it was like one of those things where we're like, hey, you know what? Like, I love teaching. I love teaching people how to sew. Like, I love it. Like, I originally wanted to be a teacher. So it's like, for me, like, everything that I do is because it heals me and a part of me that, like, needed to be healed. So it's like, I understand that it's like, sewing is a great skill. But you know what? What else is, like, super important? Like, making sure that like our youth is like mentally capable of like becoming that next generation. Because guess what? I wish someone would have asked me, hey, how do you feel? Like, I wish someone would have cared enough about me when I was like a youth. But I didn't have that. But guess what? Now that I'm an adult and like, you know, and I get to be in like these spaces with like the youth and all that kind of stuff, I get to ask them, hey, how do you feel? How was your week? Like, you know, what motivates you? What excites you? Like, what is something that you want to make? And that question, how do you feel? It's such a powerful question because most of us, we don't even ask freaking our partners, how do you feel?
Well, because it plants a little seed of hope in their brain, that
Exactly.
a little seed of hope that, wait, somebody else cares about me? Or
Exactly.
somebody else gives a fuck about how I feel?
Exactly. So it's like, that's so important because it's like, sewing is a great life skill. It is. It's proven.
Undeniable.
Yeah. But like being able to be someone that actually genuinely cares about our next generation and how we could validate them and how we could uplift them and how we could make them into like these strong adults is way more powerful than anything else. Because guess what? When especially like the kids that I teach, all the kids that I teach, they're all South Bay kids. And so they're all kids that look like me, that come from similar backgrounds as me. So it's like, if I could water that plant to grow, I'm going to do that. Because
yeah.
I wish that someone watered me to fucking grow and to just water me nutrients. Like shit, like, you know what? You could do it because I did it and I'm not special. You could do it. Any of this stuff you could do. And so it's like, that's the cherry on top. To me, it's like, I get to do that for work. I get to uplift, you know, kids that like, they probably don't have parents or adults that are telling them these kind of things, but I get to do that for work, so it's like, it's such a
At multiple different schools throughout San Diego.
exactly. And it's like, and giving them like the skill where it's like, oh damn, look, you could make something, and you could, and you see this tangible thing of like, wow, like I actually made this, and you get to freaking, be around people that also want to make things. It's a beautiful experience, and that's why for me, I'm like, it's so crazy because it's like we have had, like I feel like, it's really important for us to basically have like, these like morals, integrity within like ourselves and like the business, and like we've always basically been like, does this align with like our family, and like, because it's like we make business decisions based off of like our family, so it's like all these kind of things of like, teaching and doing all that kind of stuff that aligns with us so much, because it's like we've understood that like us in any kind of shape or form, we were all, rebellious teens. We all needed some kind of guidance, and it's and I feel like even as adults we all need guidance. We all need something to basically like, or some kind of community to basically be like, you're going in the right direction. We always need like each other to basically be pointed in the right direction. We can't do anything by ourselves. That's the whole thing.
And sewing encapsulates that in such a beautiful way. Like introducing that to the youth, sewing, it's so anti-tech. It's kind of just like the opposite of what they're used to doing. It's totally on the other side of it, but it instills all these values that are so important, like patience and failing and then getting back up, and all this stuff is incorporated into sewing. So I think that's the perfect entryway, and you're the perfect teacher because you're a living embodiment. Like you said, it's like, hey, there's no excuse. There's no excuse. I'm like you in so many ways, and I pushed through and I did it. So it's not like I have this or this extra privilege. It's like, no. So it's like there's no excuse. Yeah. And it's not like saying like, oh, there's no excuse, you better do it. It's more just like empowering, like, oh shit, like she's not only teaching it, but she's living it. Yeah. Which is unique. Yeah. You're not a full-time teacher. We're always in the studio creating cool shit. Yeah. That's what mostly, pays the bills, is people buying the clothing and everything like that, and you being an artist, but the workshops and the teaching, like you said, it not only aligns with what we do, but it feeds your soul in so many ways that it allows you to be a better person, a better creator, a better designer, and it's the most powerful thing that Sew Loca does. Yeah.
And I think we were having like a conversation yesterday about just listening, right? Like, and speaking about like things, and like I feel like I'm a reasonable person, right? Like, it's like I'm a good listener. Like I like hearing what people have to say and all that kind of stuff, but it's like it's important for us to be able to be good listeners, and to be good listeners in the way where it's like, what does this person need? Like, how can we show up for this person? Because it's like we're just basically programmed to listen, to respond. Mm-hmm. We're not listening to basically be like, oh, okay, like listen because it's like it's good and you want to like actually like help and do all that kind of stuff. We're just programmed to basically just listen and say what you got to say and then move on. But it's like, and that's one of the things where it's like, sewing is so in the moment, it's so in the moment. And it's like, and the crazy thing is that it's like, being put in this position as like a teacher, and as a teacher, being able to listen to what everyone is going through and all these kind of things is so important, because guess what? It's like you then are able to like shift them in the direction where they need to go, and I think it's really important for all of us to just listen. And like listen in the way where it's like, okay, like you're truly listening and not listening just to respond. If we all did that, like the world would be a totally different place.
Yes, but hardly anybody does that.
I know.
I mean,
You know?
that's the sadness of the world. But it's like, that you always had that extra little thing about you of that you were so, I don't know if empathy is the right word, but you could feel people's feelings. Like, you were a very empathetic person. So you always had that. So it's like, I knew teaching, it's like an effortless thing for you. It's like, you just have to be yourself, and people are learning lessons because you're so patient, you listen, and just by them seeing you as a role model of how you interact with other people and how you hold yourself is that's enough for them to, you're planting seeds in the next generation's head of being like, okay, this is a possibility. Like, I can be this person that does so many things. And it's like, I think some people ask like all the time, like, how do you do all this? How do you do all this? How do you do all this? But I think it's not like you have any kind of like superpowers where you're able to do all these things.
I do.
No, but I do. You've aligned everything around what you love to do. So
Exactly.
there's not like, you're not ever doing anything that you don't want to do.
Exactly. And I think that also aligns with what I want. Like, what do I want, right? And so it's like, these were all things that, like, for a job, like, I always wanted a job where it's like, I don't feel like I work in all reality. It's like, I just get to go and I get to basically hang out with people and I get to sew with them. And how the fuck is that a job? So it's like, it's so crazy because it's like, this is my life. This is my job. This is like what I do. And like, I really like it and I enjoy it. And it's like, and I don't feel like it's work because it's not work for me because I love it. If I could be like seriously in the sewing studio, just sewing for 12 hours straight, I would love that, but it's like, I split my time between like different things. And, I know that I'm in like in our family stage where it's like we have a preteen, mainly a teen. And, we have to make sure that like we're also like making sure she's, not getting into trouble. And like, this is like the rebellious stage,
And she's doing her homework.
And she's doing her homework because that's always been one of those things where it's like, she tries to weasel her way out of those kind of things, but it is one of those things where it's like, it's amazing to basically be able to do all these things that I never thought that I could do, that is work, that you're just kind of like, oh, cool. Like, you get to go and do all these things. And it's like, and that's,
and people pay good money.
Yeah.
Too.
And then
like,
you're just
really,
kind of
you're
like,
just like, holy shit. Like,
and it's great. And, the crazy thing is that, like, I think that a lot of people don't know this. And I really I don't like gatekeeping any of this kind of stuff. But there is a lot of, like, for creatives, there's a lot of teaching artist jobs, where it's like you could really be like a teaching artist at any kind of, like, nonprofit organization. And it's really about, like, figuring out which ones are the nonprofits that are, maybe teaching art after school, maybe teaching art during school, maybe doing all that kind of stuff. And it's a great way to continue to have your passion as like something that is going to allow for you not to be a starving artist. And so there's things like that, right? Where
and it
it's
doesn't
like,
take away.
And it doesn't take away. And it's like, and especially if you're a great teacher and like, kids want to be able to see that, because I remember when I was like a kid, my teachers, they all like didn't look like, you were just kind of like, oh shit, like who are these people? And like, they weren't like, like cool people in like the community that you could basically be like, wow, they're doing a lot of great stuff. They were just, like women that were just doing stuff in the classroom. And then and there wasn't a lot of like, brown teachers or anything like that. And so it's like, it's really interesting to basically see what that could be.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was a beautiful conversation today.
Yeah.
And I think this was a really awesome podcast. And we have a lot of cool stuff planned for the future of Skills Pay Bills. We have a lot of guests coming up that we've already booked. Christian Daniel Boots is coming up soon.
I'm so excited for that.
Yeah. Christian, basically, I think it's next Tuesday. So next episode.
Yeah.
And then after Christian, we have Wendy from Wendy is Painting, which is going to be awesome. Super cool. And then I think we have another Manny and Claudia episode.
Yeah.
So we do like 2 interviews, and then we go back on the couch. And then we just booked Positive Fee.
Nice.
So that's going to be super, super cool. And yeah, so and we have a few others, but we're starting to book all the way through the new year. Our fashion show's coming together. We'll have more on that in the next Manny and Claudia episode in a couple weeks, because we just started outlining a lot of stuff for that. We're going to have meetings with the team this week, kind of go over everything, but a lot of exciting twists and turns happening.
Yeah.
The wait till you hear the venue. It's going to be so awesome. It's going to be really, really next level. Can't wait for you to see what's up our sleeves. December 9th is the tentative date.
Yep.
So like I said, beautiful episode. I love hearing your thoughts. I love hearing you talk. You have a lot of great things to say, Claudia.
Oh, really, Manny?
Well, and so was there any kind of parting words? Did you want to say anything?
Well, I just, I don't know. I'm just really like grateful that like it's very like surreal, and it's like the Target like thing. I want to go back to like the Target thing, and like just kind of like, there is a lot of that imposter syndrome still in all that, where you're just kind of like, oh my God, and you have like this like anxiety moment of like, oh my God, like that is so awesome. But at the same time, like you're so happy, but then there's like that like doom, and and I'm really like, I really want to get through that, and I really want to just basically be like, you deserve this, and you deserve so much more, and you deserve to feel like good and happy and celebrate those kind of things. And it's a beautiful feeling to basically create something with your hands and have like this thought and have like this feeling of like, I remember making that shirt, and having like that feeling. And like I remember it was like Friday night, and we had stacked up all the shirts, and we like pinned it and all that kind of stuff. And so it's like having like that emotion of like, wow, and you see it out, and you're just kind of like, my hands touch that. That was like a thought of like, I cut that and I sewed that and I did all those kind of things, and it's like, and someone appreciates it, and the whole thought that like someone actually like appreciates it is like, it's so like heartwarming, that it's like someone would like believe in me to do that, and it's a very like, it's just like a beautiful like feeling, that people still show up for me, and that they truly like believe in like the vision behind it. And so it's an overwhelming feeling of like, you're just kind of like, whoa, like how do you, like, you're almost like that Beavis and Butthead. You're like, I'm not worthy.
I
But
think
it's
that's
like you are
Wayne's World.
Yeah.
Wayne and Garth.
Same shit.
90s.
But it's like you feel that way, but it's like you have to change it. You have to change it, and you have to be like, I am worthy. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And I'm really grateful for this whole life, and really, like I said, like if you could change your perspective on things, like your whole life changes. And so what did Jerry Seinfeld say? Remember that it's like he was interviewing like Seth Rogen, and they were like, he was like, oh, you didn't accept that award. And he was like, Seth Rogen is telling him like, hey, you didn't accept that award, and he's like, the life is the award.
Exactly.
The life is like, is the award. You get that you get to live this life as the award.
That's the award.
And it's true. It's like, and yes, there's moments where it's like, man, it sucks or whatever, but it's like, there's still so many things to like be grateful for, regardless of like, having a flat tire or doing this or doing that. There's so many great things to be grateful for. And if we could just focus on all those great things, it's like you're just basically like setting the tone for a lot of more great things to happen.
100%. And Claudia, I think I speak for everyone when I say we are grateful for you. And we love you very much. And thank you for just being your true self. And let's have some lunch. 'Cause my belly's rumbling. I'm hungry. But I love you. I love your smile. And I think this is a great episode. I know it's a great episode. And until next time, everyone, we're so grateful for everyone that watches, that listens. It fills up our cup. And we're very, very thankful for everyone. Thank you.
Yeah.
Skills pay bills. Out.
Peace.
Mic drop. Mic drop. Woo! Damn. Oh, my leg.
Wow.
What? My leg. Let's see if your phone. Yes, it's on. Nice. Damn, hour 22 minutes. We crazy. We went over.
Hi, I'm Claudia from Sew Loca. Welcome to our sewing studio. Today, you will learn how to embroider. Step number 1, choose your color. I choose this one. Step number 2, cut your thread this much. Step number 3, grab your needle and your thread and put it right through. One should be short and one should be long. Step number 4, make a knot. Abracadabra! Now you're ready to start your embroidery project. Remember, start from the bottom, out, and in. Continue this process until your whole design has been covered with stitching. Happy sewing!